All right, our crappy culture. So I can't let the show go by without talking about Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby, when I was a kid, was my hero. And when I say he was my hero, his picture was on my wall. I imitated him. I could do stand-up. I would frequently, like when I was 10 years old, would do stand-up comedy routines in his style. It is really hard to, so now we're talking about when I was a little boy, so this is like 1842, right? This is a long time ago. It's really hard to talk about the impact that the guy had. I Spy, I never missed a single, I Spy was on for 3 years. I never missed a single episode of I Spy. That is who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Bill Cosby, that character. I wanted to be that character on I Spy. The funny thing about this is looking back on it, and the left is always talking about lived experience. My lived experience was this had virtually nothing to do with him being black. It never actually really occurred to me in those terms. His blackness, it was really his poverty, the fact that he grew up in relative poverty and I grew up in relative privilege, that gave him an authenticity that I envied and that I wanted to imitate, and it gave him a kind of street smart and street cool that I didn't associate with being black. I just associated it with his economic class. But the fact that a white boy in a suburb wanted to emulate this guy, and that emulating him didn't drag him down as if he had been some rap star spewing obscenities and hatred for women, but in fact kind of elevated me to want to be more authentic, to want to be more real, to find the humor in my life, to find what was interesting in my life. That is an actual accomplishment. And the people who are picking on him today, many of them wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for Cosby, because when you're the first guy out there, all kinds of problems, present themselves that don't present themselves later on. Chris Rock will never face the things that Cosby faced, and Cosby did a good job. There's no excuse for what he did. What he did was a horrible, horrible crime. He's been convicted on 3 counts of sexual assault. And it seems like this was a history he had of feeding women drugs and then attacking them while they were incapacitated, which is obviously some kind of deep sickness. It's not even a sexy thing to think about doing to someone. It's not, to just knock people out like that. So there's no excuse for him. And it stains this achievement that he had, which was a really massive achievement, because most of you know him as like America's dad and all this stuff, which I was out of the country when that happened. That was way, way beyond my childhood. But as a child, it's just impossible to overstate the way he swept into our culture, like just a meteor, just hitting the culture, and just changed a lot of the ways we talked and a lot of the ways we thought about our own childhoods, and how he taught us to dramatize our childhoods and find the humor in them. So again, no excuses for what he did, but we have to think about the questions of generalization, because what Cosby did, what was his great achievement, was that he individualized himself. He was an individual. I didn't think of him as a black man. I didn't think of him as blacks coming along. I thought of him as Cos. He was the Cos, and he was somebody that you admired. That is what we lose with intersectionality, and that is what we lose with the racism of woke. Woke is racism. So not only does it, if a black person does something now, does it represent black people? Does it? Does what Cosby did represent black people? Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't. And guess what it also doesn't represent? It doesn't represent men. And that is the sin of the Me Too movement, is that it tars men for the behavior of louts. And that is the same kind of sin as either tarring people for being black or tarring people for being white or attacking people in these groups. It is insane. It is an insane way for us to relate to one another. Tom Brokaw has been accused of attacking someone, and he had the temerity to defend himself by saying this didn't happen. This woman said he attacked her many, many years ago, and she has a typical excuse of saying it now, 30 years later, whatever it is. And I was watching Alison Camerota and Brian Stelter talking about it on CNN, and basically we're supposed to assume that Brokaw is guilty. And all the women who work with Brokaw, over 100 women, said, no, the guy has always treated women with respect. He's always been a decent person. The woman who accused him, Linda Vester Brokaw, says that she has a grudge and that she's coming after him. I don't know which one is true, but why should we believe one over the other? But listen to this conversation between Stelter and Camerota and how they convict him, basically, on air.
Why, in this Me Too moment, where so many women have come out and told the stories of what they've experienced in Hollywood or the media or any other industry. Why the backlash against Linda Vester?
This angry denial from Tom Brokaw is a big part of it. He issued this letter first to his colleagues, but then it quickly leaked out to the media, where he called her a character assassin, absolutely denied the allegations, said she was seeking fame and fortune. This was a shocking response by Tom Brokaw. Clearly, he believes he's the victim and not Linda Vester. I think that's one of the reasons why his colleagues are standing by him. NBC is standing by him. Apparently, NBC doesn't feel there's enough evidence to investigate, to warrant any action right now. Remember, even though he's retired from the nightly news, he's a special correspondent on the network all the time. I think the unanswered question here is whether there are other women who may come forward. I've been asking Vester's attorney if he's heard from other women. He will not answer that question. But that statement you just read, alluding to Vester having more to say soon, that's curious, because last week she said she's speaking out now because she wants to make sure NBC's taking this issue seriously. She believes there was a systemic culture of sexual harassment at that company that was not taken seriously. She wants a thorough investigation. She doesn't feel that's happening.
Yeah, you know, each of us is born with his own soul with which to start the world afresh. Each of us is responsible for his own sins, and each of us is to be credited for his own achievements. The way that the press has become a vehicle for intersectionality, a vehicle for blaming people in groups, praising people in groups, looking at people in groups, is part of why nobody trusts them, part of why people criticize them. They're not oppressed. They're just doing a bad job. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is The Andrew Klavan Show. We'll see you again tomorrow. The Andrew Klavan Show is produced by Robert Sterling. Executive producer, Jeremy Boring. Senior producer, Jonathan Hay. Our supervising producer is Mathis Glover. Technical producer, Austin Stevens. Edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike Cormina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Alvera. And our animations are by Cynthia Angulo and Jacob Jackson. The Andrew Klavan Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2018.